Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are thrilled to have all of you and to be able to provide you with a little bit of conversation regarding our teacher workforce resources. Since I've been at SREB, it's been one of the things that I've always wanted to make sure that we do is to provide our media partners with good information when you need it. We've really just recently updated a lot of the resources, so we thought it's a good time for us to connect. So again, I would like to thank everybody for being a part of this. For those of you who are maybe a little bit newer to SREB, the Southern Regional Education Board has been around for 75 years, and we were first created to address the economic disparity of the South through education. So we have worked for a long time in the areas, actually started in post-secondary, and then in the late 80s started working in K-12 as well. So we as an organization, we aren't a think tank. We actually are an organization that supports our states in different ways. We accumulate and publish knowledge. We convene people to discuss the information, and then we support state actions. So a lot of what we do is in response to what our states are asking, but we also try to be on the fore of here are the issues that we're seeing that we think that you need to be aware of. In the case of what we're talking about today, the issue of the teacher workforce, everybody's dealing with. I mean, it is something that every state has on their agenda in some way. It's pretty clear that the profession itself has been going through a pretty rough stretch. In fact, that it's actually trending in the wrong direction in terms of being able to meet the needs of our students. So we know that every student needs to have a quality teacher in front of them. So the work that we're going to share with you today is the work that Megan Boren, who you're going to hear from in a moment, has led with Shaniqua Pierce and Jessica Nazim about the really taking a good look at what's going on across the South with regard to our teacher workforce. You're also going to hear a little bit from Dale Winkler and myself about some things that SREB has done, but also some points of highlights of where we see some states that are making some good progress. So with that, I just again want to say how much we really appreciate you being here. This is going to be a priority for us as long as we have a problem. SREB is going to be committed to delivering the data, but also supporting our states and anybody else that wants to see us ensure that we have a good, strong core of teachers to support all the students in our public schools. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Megan.
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, everyone. As we move along here today and share, please utilize the Q&A function. We're happy to interrupt and answer questions. You may have a button, possibly raise your hand. We can do that and certainly have you ask your question aloud as well. And we have support staff on here who can help kind of monitor that as we move through. But we wanted to share some, as Stephen said, we wanted to share some of our data with you today. We typically look through this and trying to answer questions, big questions around teacher shortages. What's the current state of the teacher workforce looking like? What's the pipeline looking like? Why is it seemingly so hard to attract and keep teaching talent? How is teacher prep helping or hurting the situation? What do instructional leaders, what are they doing to support new teachers, to support veteran teachers? What strategies are actually working? And which strategies maybe are not working all that well? But if there are successful places, how can we highlight those, and how can we highlight the implementation strategies for these pieces? So these are constantly huge questions that we're asking ourselves, and we're trying to help state leaders as well as local leaders identify some data and research and other resources that could potentially help them answer some of these pieces, and possibly even help them go down into deeper data collection and analysis work to be able to understand what is and isn't happening with the teacher workforce. So we're going to share with you today a little bit about what we've found in our data collection and how you can navigate this data yourself online, and some questions maybe that it will raise for you in your reporting about these issues and in your work in interviewing and talking to other folks in this space who are studying or working to help attract and retain great teachers. When we think about the teacher workforce pipeline and the policies that surround this and practices that surround this to attract and keep teachers, we think about this not just in one kind of look. Do we have enough teachers in classrooms? That's important. We need the count, we need the body, so to speak. We need that quantity of teachers in the classroom, but there's so much more to that to look at when we're thinking about teacher shortages. We also need to think about what types of teachers are we attracting and retaining? What are the demographics around those? How diverse is the teacher pipeline? What kind of education levels do they have? Where are they coming from? Why are they interested in teaching? We also need to look at the quality level of the teachers that we have and the teachers who are coming through the pipeline in order to understand better where there are great teachers, where there are effective teachers, and where teachers need those extra supports in order to grow and provide students with the best education and instruction possible. We also really need to look at the distribution of teaching talent. It's not enough to just see if we have enough bodies, to see if we're recruiting enough people, and to see if they're effective. We also need to look and see how well the talent is distributed across lots of aspects, whether it's geographical aspects, whether it's across all subjects, across all grade levels, any of those kind of variables. We need to understand the distribution and where we have gaps. But along with this, we know that we also have to look at a big, kind of elephant, so to speak, around teacher compensation. It comes up consistently and constantly, and I know you all report on this issue quite a bit, but it's important for us to try and highlight as much data as we can around these 5 specific things in order to help with this conversation, as well as to help with policy strategies that can improve teacher working conditions and ultimately improve and increase the quantity and quality of teachers that we have in all of our schools. We know that compensation is not the only reason or the only strategy to employ for making teaching more attractive. There's so much more to this, and we do have research on these pieces, but this is where our data really lies, in those quantifiable numbers. But we do have research and resources that will point out to you around those other aspects that are very key and important, like strong leadership and instructional practice and supports for teachers, like mentorship and teacher leadership in order to help coach new and struggling teachers, like the lack of autonomy and trust that's happening right now, the high stress environments, high caseloads for teachers, and other aspects. We certainly research those pieces. But these are some of the numbers, at least, that we're going to look at in these 5 sections today. So let's get started. Here's an easy, fast link for you guys to follow along and to click around for you to view all of our data, plus all of our, this will get you to all of our reports and other things as well. So feel free to go ahead and pull up that web page, but I'm going to show you how to navigate some of our resources and then highlight a few pieces that may be of interest to you. So we have 2 dashboards essentially available to you all on our website. One is around teacher shortages and the quantity, quality, all of those pieces that I highlighted. And then we have another dashboard around teacher compensation that I'll navigate for you today as well, and just give you a peek into how it works and how to find all of this data for yourself as you're reporting. So first, we're going to look through this teacher workforce data that's around the teacher shortages. And as you come to this page that is linked on the slides, which, by the way, will be shared if you all would need it. Janita can certainly Our news manager can certainly share our slides with you all, so you have these links. But here's our dashboard on the teacher workforce data, or the teacher shortages. I have this minimized so that we can kind of scroll through a little bit easy today. But of course, you can click through this yourself and look at any specifics that you want to look at. But you'll notice here at the top of this dashboard, we have things sorted by these tabs in order for you all to be able to find different kinds of data that you may be looking for. The first tab is around teacher quantity, and this highlights the counts of teachers that we have, but we also integrate other data such as survey data here that's highlighted in this green section below. And then we have accordions that you can drop down where you can see state by state numbers. And as we collect this for more and more years, the trend data will be available to you all to see changes, as well as for state leaders and local leaders to see changes as well. So we try to highlight the regional kind of takeaways at the top and then provide the state data as you scroll down through the resource. We also tend to spotlight different things that may be of interest or use, or even data that some states are collecting, but others maybe are not collecting and making publicly available that they possibly would find very useful, such as this data that we feature from Delaware and North Carolina, where they distill and disaggregate their teacher count data in order to understand whether retention and mobility and turnover is affected at all by early career or experienced teachers, veteran teachers who have 4 or more years in the profession. So that's kind of how to navigate this piece. I'll just click through really quickly to highlight. We have a preparation tab, which goes along with our quantity to looking at the pipeline of teachers, but you can see the pipeline has been dipping lately, different streams of where teachers are coming from, and then again can drop down and see our state-by-state data and showing some trends in those teachers who are coming through the pipeline. We also have data on the demographics of teachers, on the shortage areas. This highlights vacancies in total. It also highlights shortages by subject. And then you can view that state by state. We have some data on quality. These are proxy measures, of course, on quality. The number of years a teacher has been teaching, whether the teacher is certified in a specific content field and teaching in that content field, whether the teacher is certified at all, or if they're on an emergency or provisional license. And you can see this data, of course, state by state. And lastly, we have the distribution data. How are teachers being distributed across different areas, such as low poverty or high poverty schools? And there's so much more here that we encourage and highlight for our state and local leaders to collect beyond just this data that's currently publicly available in most states. You can also see our sources, definitions, and other aspects here. Some comes from federal data, some comes from state-by-state databases. And if there's any questions about these, we're always happy to answer. In order to move along so we have time to speak with you and any questions you have today, I'll highlight our second dashboard for you, which is our teacher compensation dashboard. When you come to this page, you'll see that there's a Tableau dashboard embedded into our website that you can navigate to find teacher compensation benefits. We don't just look at teacher salaries, because compensation is so much more than that. It's also about the benefits like health and retirement. We do an analysis on teacher take-home pay. And we're hopeful that this also inspires others to not only look at the teacher benefits in their local districts and regions, but also looking beyond just these quantifiable numbers, looking at time off, other sorts of leave policies, looking at different working conditions that are all part of a compensation package in general. But we at least try and provide as much aggregate data as we can on the quantifiable numbers. So I'll show you here how to kind of navigate this resource. Many of you all have seen this before, but we've had a lot of questions on how do you get down into the details of the numbers. So we want to highlight that for you today. When you're in the dashboard, it comes up automatically with the home page, and you can click into any state that you want to start with. Because SREB is located in Georgia, I'll click there first. And you can see, because it's Tableau embed, sometimes it takes a moment to load. Sometimes it's a little testy and isn't going to work. Here we go. So when you click on a state, it'll load initially the state profile. This gives you kind of a one-pager, so to speak, sneak peek into all of the kinds of key data that we offer here in this dashboard. So you can see a peek into Georgia's average teacher salaries, and the latest year we have collected is 21-22 school year, because unfortunately, all of this important data does lag a little bit. You can compare that with our regional average and with the national average for teachers. See Georgia's cost of living index to have slight comparison on what this salary means to teachers. Also, there's an analysis pointed out from the Economic Policy Institute on the teacher wage penalty. So we do incorporate other kinds of data into this dashboard. Then you can peek into the healthcare benefits, the retirement benefits, and then the average take-home pay, which I'll go into these a bit further. If you want to view any other state, you just come up here to the state profiles button in the menu bar, and you're able then to click into any other state that you wish. You're also able to click into any of our 4 key aspects here in this dashboard, such as we'll go to the salary section first. When you're in these sections, we have a really great tooltip that you can hover around and see at a glance the top kind of takeaways, if you will, for teacher salaries that highlighted by state. You can see here the line graph shows you the average Tennessee salary by year for the last 5 years. So you can see how those salaries have changed. Then you can see those numbers at the top to give you kind of those key takeaways. This allows you to hover around quite quickly and see the differences state by state, if you're intrigued about that. Or you can click into a specific state, and this will take you into a little bit more detail of information. On the left here, we have the statewide minimum teacher salary. It's really important to know that we highlight this in order to highlight the policy of teacher salaries in the state. This is the legislated minimum teacher salary, meaning no teachers can make less than this in the state. We have several states who do not have salary schedules. So you'll note some states have a bare graph where they just have one minimum salary level, and they don't have a scale that goes across a number of years, or a scale that reflects different degree requirements. But most of our states do have this teacher salary schedule. So you can see that information. And then on the right, it's the average teacher salaries, what teachers are actually paid. And we have this sliding scale where you can focus in on just a few years, or you can look all the way back to the 2013-2014 school year and see quite a bit of data on the state that you're interested in here. We also have this button up here to compare salaries. If you're interested in looking at a comparison of Georgia versus the SREB region, it lines up bar graphs here for you to be able to do that comparison. Then you can also select any other state that you wish. For instance, if you'd want to look at Georgia versus Alabama in those salaries.
Megan, before you leave that, I think it's just worth an exclamation point here to point out. This is interesting when we talk to policymakers, because obviously depending on the level of policymaker you're talking about, they often think of the salary schedule, but the work that Megan and the team has put into here is the actual average salary for all teachers across the state. So when you look at this, it's you're obviously going to have some places that make a lot more, but it's important to note you also have some that make a lot less. And it's sometimes that's a little bit tough pill for people to swallow because they think about their local district sometimes. especially people that come from a suburban or urban district and what the salary ranges are. But this was the work put in by the team to really make sure that we were giving a good measure of central tendency here that takes into account local supplements and that sort of thing.
Next in the dashboard is our healthcare information. And this tooltip is quite handy, where you can see the state's average individual and family premiums, the cost to teachers for different kinds of healthcare plans. And if you click into a state, and it actually comes up with a chart that shows you every single state supported and state accessible teacher health benefit plan that teachers can choose from. It has the names of these plans here on the left, and then it has detailed information around the premiums for individual teachers, plus their in-network deductibles, out-of-pocket maximums, and then their family premiums, deductibles, and out-of-pocket maximums. It also shows you whether there's additional benefits available to those teachers in these plans. And then at the top gives you a state average cost for teachers. If you want to go look at another state or go around the tooltip again, you just click the healthcare button and it brings you back to the map. I'll also point out that in these maps, you see there's different colors. And you have a legend here that shows you by quartile the sorting of our states and whether they offer the highest or lowest benefit. This one in particular for healthcare shows you the cost to the individual premiums. So you can see those in dark color have the highest cost of individual premiums for teachers for their health benefits, and those with the lightest blue have the lowest cost. Maryland is in gray because the state does not offer any state level health benefits. Those health benefits are offered district by district. So that state does not have the benefit information logged here in our dashboard. Then you can move on to retirement. And this is where there's quite a bit of information. It gets a little bit tricky. So we're always happy to answer information about retirement benefits. But again, there's a tooltip here for you to be able to hover around. We actually calculate the maximum potential gross annual pension benefit for a teacher retiring in that year with 35 years of service. So you can see here what teachers could potentially be making. And there's definitions and information about how all of these pieces are pulled and calculated if you're curious. But if you click into a state, it'll show you options to be able to look into these retirement benefits by tier, which is by hire date. And then if the state offers a hybrid or an investment plan option, you'll also be able to see those pieces. If we click into one, this is where you get to quite a lot of detailed information about the retirement benefit, about the benefit formulas, the potential gross benefit that teachers could make upon retirement in that year, and other aspects of contribution amounts, vesting periods, so on and so forth. And then lastly, we have our take-home section. And this piece is where we calculate what's a teacher actually being able to take home in their paycheck, looking across all of these benefits. So if you click into a state here, you'll actually be able to see a receipt style analysis, somewhat like a paycheck, where you can view a first-year teacher, an average mid-career teacher, and an average teacher at retirement level. What is their annual gross pay, and then their annual net pay, and then all of the calculation of how we got to that piece. So you can see here that for Arkansas, it gives you the gross pay at the bottom, and then the net pay calculation that we were able to do. These are averages, of course, and averages for those first mid-career and end-of-career teachers. And then there is the comparison opportunity here where you can compare with the SREB regional averages, or you can compare with any particular state that you might want to view. And then you can also look back across throughout this entire dashboard. You can look back at different years. and be able to view the data in years previous. So that's how we get through our teacher compensation dashboard, and happy to answer any questions on this. I don't think I see any in the question function though. I'll get back into our slide deck here really quickly. We also want to, pardon me, got to click through all of this here. Also want to highlight, we do have slides available here, and we want to feature a couple pieces of information because this is a really great slide deck that goes through kind of the story of all of this data that we have and highlights some key pieces and gives great visualizations that you may find useful in your reporting. So if we looked at, excuse me, get my screen to work here. If we look at some of these pieces, we have information on, like, for instance, the interest of Gen Z in teaching, and survey data actually that highlights why Gen Z may see teaching as an unattractive career. This is a piece that SREB is actually working on to study in more depth. We have a partnership with Vanderbilt University, and this is one topic that we're working on with them to study a lot more deeply with a few of our states in the region, looking at both qualitative and quantitative data around Gen Z's interests and how can we potentially make teaching more attractive to this incoming generation in order to help with the workforce pipeline. So we're really excited to feature that data here in a few months, but you can go ahead and see on our website, we do have some reports that are literature reviews, and one is around this Gen Z interest. Another is around teacher labor markets and what has been studied in this piece, and you all may find those reports quite interesting. I think Jessica could probably put those direct links in for you here in a moment in the chat. Some other information we have in this slide deck that you all might find useful includes a little bit more analysis than what we have in our dashboards. For instance, in the dashboard, we feature how much the average teacher turnover by state in our region for those who report it. There was an analysis done, for instance, by the Economic Policy Institute to show a few years ago what the average turnover cost is for a district to replace a teacher. And so then we offer kind of a sneak peek calculation into Delaware, our state with the lowest average teacher turnover, and how much turnover costs them in the 2020-2021 school year on average. It could have been more than this, actually, and potentially was, considering that this analysis was not was done before our current inflation and economic issues. But we do offer these kinds of analyses and spotlights with additional information, again, that may not always be in our dashboards. So this kind of slide deck could be really interesting to pull. We show additional visualizations like this one, where the data by is in the dashboard to show our states that have shortages across different subjects and grade levels. And this provides a visualization to easily be able to see which states have those shortages.
Megan, if I could just chime in here real quick. You know, she's showing you this as an example, but one of the things that I would like to share with you too is, you know, this is one of the questions that we are asking whenever we have an opportunity to speak to different groups. Is, you know, when you see these shortages by subject, basically it turns out these are the number of open positions that have not been filled. Well, in an ever-growing, especially STEM workforce, that becomes more and more dependent on automation, artificial intelligence, a lot of the stuff that many of you have heard us talk about. You know, the other question that we are starting to push people to think about is, so these are the open positions, which are problematic, certainly, and certainly you've got to address those first. But also, what are the opportunities that students are not getting? So in other words, if a state says that they don't have a shortage in science, is that because they're not teaching physics, which is a problem? So there's an additional question that goes all the way down to the school and district level of just because you're not offering it does not mean you do not have a shortage, especially if we're trying to really position our students and our graduates to be able to be a part of a very STEM focused workforce of the future. So just, you know, with our media friends, I just thought I'd kind of throw that in there a little bit that, yeah, we're certainly in a major deficit here with the shortages, but at some point we also have to ask, what are we not doing in addition to the positions that we're not filling?
Throughout this, there are so many extra questions that this data provides, and that's always a conversation that we have with state and local leaders and encourage a lot more disaggregation and deeper look at all of these data points. Even though this is very helpful throughout, it's still not enough data to understand the true depth of the problem and to identify the best solutions. But it's important to at least look at what we have. And again, this slide goes into sometimes a little bit deeper analysis or more updated preliminary analysis, such as the vacancy rates in the South have greatly increased up to the last school year. We also visualize different kinds of national survey data to help highlight what's really going on, because it's really important when you're going through all this to not just look at the numbers, but to also look at what teachers are telling us. We highlight different pieces where you can see state by state some of these visualizations, such as a spotlight here on our national board certification, because the South leads in this regard across the country. So we like to highlight the good news too when we find it. And then there's some deeper pieces on things that aren't trackable across many of our states, but some states do have some information. So we highlight, for instance, here, some state examples around interesting teacher effectiveness data. And you can download these slides, of course, and see all of this yourself. Here's a national analysis on teacher turnover by location and poverty level, highlighting where we do have some significant gaps. And hopefully this data inspires others again to go deeper and to look in their local areas at what's really happening. So I'll pause here. There's a question in the chat function here from Eric. Is there any data that explores teacher pay or teacher take-home pay with academic outcomes? We don't have any of that comparison ourselves. We have not been able to have the capacity to compare take-home pay with academic outcomes, but there are some researchers looking at this piece. Again, it's mostly in an aggregated form rather than a look down into a specific district. I will say we are ourselves looking at going deeper with the teacher compensation data pools, and early next year we will be featuring a new dashboard on our website that looks at sample pools from a rural, suburban, and urban district in all 16 of our SREB states to highlight some of the differences that may occur across different geographies. We're unfortunately not able to pull every single district in all 16 states. Mostly because actually that data is not transparently provided from every single district in all of our states, but also, of course, it would be quite a huge undertaking, but we are able to at least pull some of that sample data, and we're excited to be able to feature that early next year.
It would also be really difficult to do this in terms of making it generalizable across states because they're taking different tests. So unless you have a state like Kentucky that requires ACT for all students and compare that to, I believe it's Arkansas, who also gives the ACT for all students, it'd be awfully hard to make a whole lot of generalization across states, but you could certainly look at it within states if you can get access to the data.
Did I miss a question in the chat? There's a little conversation about something in certain states. Not sure I follow.
I think you're good to go on, Megan. Thank you for checking.
Okay, great.
So what we'd like to do very briefly, because we know that we're running up on time, is just share, that as we've done our work, we are actually, my apologies, I got ahead of myself, Megan. You go, this is still you.
It's okay. You could
Okay.
certainly take over and give me a moment's break from talking.
Okay. Well, I think it's important to continually, and this is why we are so committed to this, that we continue to really understand how this is going to affect us and our economy. I've said this many times, and some of you on the call today have heard me say it. This is not an education issue. This is actually a workforce issue. This is actually where we have to take a look at this from a workforce and economic perspective, and not just simply, oh, well, that's an education issue. We'll need to deal with that over on the side. So constantly asking the questions of how this is affecting our students. Obviously, people are doing that. That's important. But we also have to think about how it does affect our workforce and economy. And that's why it's important that we then go that next step and ask, what can we do to really strengthen that teacher workforce? So we don't like to just pull data and tell everybody either everything's good or everything's the sky is falling. We would like to be about solutions. As a chemist, I like to say you're either part of the solution or you're part of the precipitate. And so we want to be part of that solution. So working with states, Megan has led a lot of efforts with other states that we've really gotten into the weeds about what are the things that need to happen to really start to solve these teacher shortages. So you can see this on our website, where we really have put together a blueprint for how you can start to address these teacher shortages. I think that what we're seeing is we're seeing some states that are taking some small steps, some states that are wanting to take some bigger steps. But this is certainly a pretty big issue to try to move forward on. Megan, I think Ty has a question.
Let me see if I can. Okay, you should be able to talk now, Ty.
Thanks for this. Can you all hear me?
We can. Hey,
Sorry,
Ty.
So sorry. Hey, how you doing, Stephen?
Very well.
So you talked about the teacher vacancy rates rising in the South, but we've also heard about hiring teachers with the federal funds. I'm wondering if you can talk about the supposed fiscal cliff and how that might affect the teacher workforce.
Yeah, I'll just tell you, I'm terrified about that, Ty. I mean, I think you may know this, but when we first went into COVID, we convened a regional task force to start talking about how do we reopen schools. Well, that parlayed into, once we started seeing the federal money flowing, trying to give some good guidance to districts and states about how to expend those funds. One of the things that we told them to be very careful about is to think about the total cost of ownership for anything, whether it be trying to go to one for one, or whether it was using that for personnel. So one of the things that does terrify me is we've got these teachers that are currently being paid for with federal money. When that federal money dries up, either the school district's going to have to find a way to fund those teachers, or we're going to see all those teachers' salaries go away. I think it's always the worry anytime you put any teacher on a federal dollar amount that we know is term limited. So I would say that while we don't have data quite yet, because it's not, or at least I've not seen it, Megan may have seen it, but what I do know is that as I'm talking to different states and state superintendents, that it is very much a concern that teachers is, a lot of the money was spent on things like tutors that may not be full-time teachers, but there was a significant amount of funds spent on hiring teachers as well. And when that funding's gone, we got to find a way to fund it. We've seen over the last several years where some states have had some pretty significant changes to their funding formulas. I know in Kentucky, they're saying that they're going to take a look at their SEEK formula. Georgia had a task force last year, and then you've got Texas and Tennessee that actually made pretty significant changes to their funding models. And as part of that would be to look at their how they're funding the FTE counts. But yeah, Ty, I mean, that would be a great piece, because I think that is a worry that I have. I think it's a worry shared by a lot of policymakers, that we made a lot of decisions based on short-term federal dollars that may or may not be around soon.
Thanks. Thank you.
So Megan, you want to quickly walk them through the blueprint?
Sure. Within this blueprint, within our detailed technical assistance that we do with states, we help them go through a process, a step-by-step process to create their own blueprint for action in order to solve this. We really help them to understand their own specific challenges, looking at their own data, looking at their own research, helping them to go deeper within that. Then create a comprehensive blueprint plan that must be collaborative. You must have teachers at the table, principals, district leaders, as well as all sorts of policymakers and researchers. And then help them think about an action plan of putting this into practice long-term, because these changes cannot be short-term. There are no silver bullets within this, unfortunately. And of course, making a huge continuous investment in teachers in order to support students. We also help them to see that you cannot just look at one particular aspect of the teacher workforce pipeline. You have to look at the pathways and the preparation. You have to look at teacher supports, their working conditions. You have to look at the licensure policies, to look at hiring and recruitment practices across districts. And you have to look at those compensation pieces as well. All of these elements have to fit together. If you're only tackling one, you're not tackling the entire set of causes to our teacher shortage problem. We have more details about this, what all of these aspects mean. And we also spotlight states who are doing really great things, and local districts even who are doing great things. We also spotlight some of our own programs. I'm not sure if we still have Dale on the line, or Stephen, if you want to talk a little bit about some of our programs that we have that folks may be interested in.
I'm here.
Go for it, Dale.
All right. Well, thank you. And good morning. SREB's Office of School Improvement facilitates two research-based teacher prep programs. Our first one, SREB's, it's called Teaching to Lead. It's a teacher prep program that offers intensive professional development and coaching supports that builds the capacity of teachers who come from business and industry. And we help them plan instruction, engage diverse students, and manage classrooms, create standards-driven assessments, and gain confidence and remain in the profession. Our Teaching to Lead program is delivered by trainers with real-world teaching and leadership experience that's needed to inspire and support our new teachers. The program contains 4 modules. They're on instructional planning, instructional strategies, classroom assessment, and classroom management. And they give the participants the tools and the strategies they need to be successful on day 1 in the classroom, first week, and during the first 9 weeks of school. And then it's customizable, the program is, in scope and sequence, which allows participants to receive as many as 200 hours of training before, during, and after the first year of teaching. This program, it's been adopted statewide in 4 of our compact states, and it's been adopted partially in local districts in 5 of the compact states. And there are several large districts in 4 other states outside of the SREB region that's utilizing Teaching to Lead. Our second teacher prep program focuses on math and science. It's modeled after Teaching to Lead. It helps the new and early career math and science teachers master those essential teaching skills in the 4 areas mentioned before: instructional planning, engaging strategies, assessment, and classroom management. And we refer to this program as SMART, Science and Mathematics Alternative Routes to Teaching. The SMART program has been implemented in districts in 2 of our compact states and is showing some positive results. Our internal studies indicate these programs are helping with teacher retention and with student achievement. And the alternative teacher prep programs have been at the local and state levels now for several years. Also, to help support our veteran teachers, SREB offers a variety of professional learning and coaching services that highlight powerful instructional practices. So those are just a few of the programs and supports that we provide through the Office of School Improvement at SREB.
And Dale, if I may, just to put a little finer point on the Teach to Lead. When I was Commissioner of Education in Kentucky, I brought Teach to Lead to Kentucky because we had, I don't remember the exact numbers, it was roughly 63% retention rate of our CT, our career and technical education teachers in our shared time centers. Within 3 years, I believe it was, Dale, of starting the program, Kentucky went to a 90% retention rate. And now I think it's over 90. But it's, which is, I always kind of chuckle a little bit that I was smart enough to bring SREB in when I was commissioner, and then I ended up here. But it definitely gives a level of comfort and confidence, I think, to our new teachers. And that's, so I'm very excited that we branched that out into our science and math work as well.
We have a question from Maureen Downey. She asks in the Q&A box, whenever I listen to the presentations on PISA results, Andreas Fleischer makes the point that the US values smaller class sizes, which means we need lots more teachers than other countries, and that perhaps we should consider prioritizing the quality of our teachers, even if it means raising class size. He points to higher performing countries that have far higher average class sizes. He suggests we spend a lot more money for unimpressive results, and that it would be wiser to go with fewer teachers but higher quality ones. Your view?
Yeah, Maureen, that's a great question, and it's a great policy talking point. I think that there's some validity to that, but I don't think it's a universal thing. I don't believe it's something that we can say universally. As a former science teacher, chemistry teacher in particular, you know, the idea of having a great chemistry teacher is certainly there. But as a chemistry teacher, I also would not want 35 to 40 students in my chemistry lab. Because one of the things we do know is that there are certain things, especially the hands-on type learning activities, that really build toward long-term learning that have some safety aspects of that. There is certainly some valid data that has come out that Andreas has talked about that I would agree with, that there are certain content and topics that if we did focus more on our higher quality teaching, maybe that could work. But it's also a little bit of apples to oranges here, in that there are just some significant differences in how some of these other countries approach education, the education system as a whole, versus how we do in the US. So I realize that that's kind of it's not a very definitive answer. It's because I think that like most things in education, it's more complicated than just simply making that blanket statement.
I will add, though, that there are some very highly successful models that have worked across many states and many types of districts that allow for higher class sizes with high quality teachers and lower class sizes with those new teachers or teachers who maybe aren't quite as effective. Those models of kind of team teaching approaches and working to adjust those class sizes, and also provide coaching models and coaching systems for mentors and teacher leaders to coach those coming in and who need some extra help. Those are highly successful, and I think it gets a little bit at some of the points made here, that if you do have a higher quality teacher, they can take on a higher number of students and still be very successful with those students. So those models are studied quite a bit and are very impressive. There's another question from Talia Richmond. She asks, with the spike in uncertified teachers in the South, is SREB working on measuring the impact of these educators on student achievement? Or do y'all know of any other organizations doing this research? We aren't specifically conducting any deep studies on measuring the impact of educators on student achievement, mostly because there are only a couple of our states in our region who actually collect enough data to be able to look at teacher effectiveness and teacher outcomes along with student achievement. This data is really hard to get a hold of. And so we do not currently have an effort with that, but there are some of our states who do work to collect this data, who have been doing some studies with research organizations. I know, for instance, North Carolina has partnered with RTI as well as Harvard over the years to study some of this and to look at the impact of educators on student achievement. There is some broader research around teacher qualifications and the kinds of impacts that they will have on student achievement. So we do know from this broader research that uncertified teachers who come in with little to no preparation do have lower student achievement pieces. And so that is a significant issue as those numbers go up for uncertified teachers. And there's also an increase in teachers with inexperience. And there is research, of course, that shows that that has an effect on student achievement. Although it is a little bit generalizable, it's not across the board that, you know, a new teacher will have less achievement. They can certainly come in and be high quality right off the bat. Stephen, I'm not sure if you want to add to anything.
No, I
there.
think that's good. I mean, I think the you know, again, it's really hard to measure this across states. It's one thing if you were to do a deep dive on states but when you talk about student achievement, you've got to look at the common measure. You know, one state's test is very different than another state's test. There are states who have questions that are very rote, and there are states that have more critical thinking in their state test, and you can't compare their achievement in that way because it's just not a common measure. So it actually will give you a false positive or negative. But certainly going deeper into a single state is a possibility where you can at least make that measure common because of the states within. And of course, again, then you've also get into the issues of pretty much with reading and math, you can get into it 3rd through 8th and once in high school, but then in the other areas, it's awfully hard unless you're talking about specific grades in science or social studies. And more of our states are going away from a social studies test in general.
We're happy to stay on and answer any other questions that may come through, but Stephen, let's do a wrap up just in case folks need to go since we're about at the hour.
Yeah, happy to do that because unfortunately I am going to have to leave shortly myself. I've actually have a call here in a few minutes with one of our legislators. Yeah, again, I just want to tell you how much we appreciate you being here. I'd like to make sure that everybody is familiar with the name Janita Poe. Janita is our news manager here at SREB and is happy to coordinate with you for different things. She's happy to connect with you and help, you know, walk you through where we have data on the website. Happy to connect you to me if you have, if you need an interview, if you need more background to me or to Megan or Dale or any of the people that you've heard from today. Janita is kind of your point of contact for all of that, and we're happy to anytime we can to be able to be a help to you. As I always say to any of you whenever I've met you in person, please think of us as a primary resource. We're happy to give you the information. Sometimes I think we can save you a lot of time of you having to go do it yourself. So much of the work that you saw presented today Megan and her team took from many, many resources and put together, both in terms of here's the data, but also here's an analysis of the data. And I do think that that is one of the things that makes SREB a little bit unique is not only are we giving you here's the data, we can say 15 out of 16 states, we can also give you an analysis of the things that are going through there. And so, you know, again, I just in front of all of you, I want to thank Megan for all of her work. I want to thank Shaniqua and Jessica Nadzam for all the work. I made a point to say her last name because I actually misspoke earlier because I used to have a student called Jessica Nazim. But thank you for all the work you guys have done and put you and put out there for the world to see. So to all of our media friends, thank you. And hopefully this has been helpful for you. We're happy to stay on and help you in any way we can. But please, please think of us as a primary resource anytime we can be of value. Over the next year, I can tell you we're going to continue to work on this. We're going to focus on pathways. We're going to focus on artificial intelligence. You're going to see some interesting things coming out about that after the first of the year. We're going to be working really closely with a lot of our states on thinking about student success in post-secondary. And it's I think that there's some really fun and focused things that you're going to see coming out of us starting at the beginning of the year. So anything we can do, please let us know. We're happy to do it. Oh, of course, literacy is the other one that I failed to mention is going to be our 5th priority for the year. So and there we're going to be talking about longitudinal literacy, not just K-3, but how do we go all the way through the adults, the 20+ million functionally illiterate adults in the South to help them become employed. So with that, I'm just going to say again, thank you for being here. Please let us know if there's any way we can help. And the team's going to stay on if you have some additional questions. And it looks like we have Ty has his hand up.
I think if you unmute, you'll be able to.
There we go. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to drill down a little bit further on my other question about the teacher supply versus potential oversupply. From the data I've looked at, we have more teachers than ever, at least in recent history, while enrollment's been kind of flat, maybe dropping in some places, rising a little bit in others. And so I'm wondering how you square that with, you know, you had a slide showing Georgia has a shortage in ELA and math. Now, it could be we're just hiring lots of teachers in arts and science or something, but I'm just wondering if you've looked at that at all.
Well, it's important to drill down and look at what teachers are being hired, what types of teachers, what types of positions are being hired. With the COVID money, which was asked about before, in some places, a significant amount of that is actually used to hire teachers' assistants or hire long-term subs or tutors. And sometimes those are included in the counts. States actually report these counts a little bit differently, even to the federal government. This data, as you look across different data sources, are never quite aligned. And that is one of the reasons. You also have to look at some of the details that we attempt to try and report here and that we encourage folks to go deeper on is how much certification these teachers have, how much training these teachers have, emergency and provisional teachers, which is on an extreme rise, especially in the South. Those are being hired at quite an increased rate. And those teachers, while it increases the count, it does not increase the instructional practices and the instructional effectiveness within the classroom. So we're seeing a greater number, partly because of those additional services needed for students, mental health services, additional kind of tutoring services, coverage of additional assistants or teachers. But if you're looking at really at the detail of what types are being hired, and more than likely those who will be dismissed first after the COVID money goes away, it will be those ones that are part-time, are assistants, are inexperienced, or uncertified. So it's important to go a lot deeper than just looking at a total count.
Okay, thank you very much.
And we certainly have not made much progress in the sciences and the maths. I mean, science, math, special needs, career and technical education are all areas that continue to be on the decline. And, you know, again, I've got a bias here because I'm a science guy, but also just knowing where the workforce is going. We've got to put some priority on it. Yes, we need kids to be able to read and do math, but that thinking component that comes from science and the project management work that comes out of career and technical education, or in the case of Georgia, career technical and agricultural education, are pretty critical to whether the South can be competitive in the economy. And I apologize, I've got to run, but thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Stephen. There's a couple folks left on. If you have any questions, we're happy to attempt to address them for you. I think most folks are leaving. I don't see any other questions coming through. So for the last of you who are on here, thank you so much for this today. And please contact us if you have any follow-ups or need any further information.